Welcome to Bibliophiles Anonymous, episode 28. I'm Jess, and Denise couldn't be with us tonight. She seems to have contracted the plague, and she's lost her voice. So, I have a couple of very special guests. I have Tim and Rebecca, who are known on the tavern as Marita and Peregrine. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
So, they're going to help me tonight, and we're going to be talking about Queen of Sorcery, continuing our Eddingspalooza theme for this month. But first, we're going to talk about anything else we've been reading lately. So, Rebecca, what have you been reading?
I have 4 books on my reading list at the moment. This is not uncommon.
No, it's not. It's really not.
I finally managed to actually get back into Fire Study by whatever the name is, Maria Snyder.
Yes.
My problem, I think, was the ebook that I have was pages weren't turning properly, so it was taking a couple of seconds to turn the page every time, and I just got bored and fed up.
Yeah, that would be annoying.
But it's improved now. It's actually turning pages properly, so I've actually started to get back into it, and I'm trying really hard to make myself finish.
I love those books.
I know, and I feel bad for not loving them as much as you.
Well, it's okay. We can't all love the same thing.
But it is getting better. They've started to, things have started to happen more. Hang on, I've got it right here. Why don't I just look? Where am I up to? They've just gotten the horses. Leaf and Yelena have just gotten the horses, and they've just gone back to the market. And they've rescued her father and the bunch from the vermin.
Yeah.
People. So things are starting to happen now. I like it better when things happen.
Well, yeah, if there's not any, action going on, you kind of lose interest. I understand that. I had that problem with, I don't remember the name of it, but it was like a 500-page book, and 250 pages in, the only thing that had happened was the main character got huffy and went to the neighboring kingdom. I'm like, nothing's happening. Come on. I've read books that were 250 pages that had more things happen than this. Come on.
Yeah, okay, that's bad. That seems to be my problem at the moment. The other one I picked up, we've got a whole bunch of books that neither of us have read sitting on our bookshelf, and I decided that my task for this year was to go through all those books and actually read them.
Well, that was kind of my goal for this year, and I'm failing miserably, so...
Yeah, I'm not doing too badly, but I found one called Time's Eye by Arthur C. Clarke and Stephen Baxter, and I am I'm only up to page 68. Wow, that's depressing. But not a lot's happening. There's it's time travel. And time travel apparently requires a lot of setup. So we're still in the setting up of getting everyone in the same place, and not everyone's actually in the same place yet. The good thing is that no one's actually arguing that it's time travel. I was very impressed. One character realised that time travel was the only explanation for what had happened, and the other characters, who half of them are from 2037, half of them are from 1885, and they've all just kind of gone, yeah, okay, that's the only thing that makes sense. It's time travel. And I'm kind of sitting there going, that never happens.
No, usually there's somebody's like, that's not possible.
Yeah, well, it helped. I mean, the 2037 characters have made the observation that it's easier for them because they've had years and years of time travel stories.
Yeah.
So the concept for them is not that unusual. So they're kind of having an easier time of it.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, it does actually make sense.
Tim, have you been reading anything?
Not been reading a lot, not as much as I'd like. Been rereading Lord of the Rings.
Always a good one.
Yeah, and I actually picked up volume 9 of The History of Middle-earth, Sauron Defeated.
I cannot find anything past volume 5.
Oh, it's a pity, because that's the volume that's got the epilogue, the never included, never published epilogue to The Lord of the Rings.
See,
where Sam's telling the story to his kids.
Yeah, see, when the movies came out, they re-released the first 5 volumes of the Histories of Middle-earth over here, and I bought them all when I found them. But they never released the rest of them.
And
I'm
just tell them about the crazy Tolkien's crazy story.
After that, it goes into the Notion Club papers. Now, The Lord of the Rings, it's this idea that Tolkien isn't writing it, he's just translating it from the Red Book of Westmarch, the Hobbit's own records. That's kind of the frame of the story. In this Notion Club papers story, I don't know what you call it really, but he kind of takes a different perspective. Instead of Professor Tolkien being the translator, he takes himself out of the picture and he makes up this entire group of fictitious scholars who are kind of writing his Middle-earth mythology. But they're not just making it up, they're having dreams in which this story is coming to them. And they're not sure whether it's reality, like they're having dreams of a long-forgotten past that actually existed, or if they're just making it all up in their dreams. But they're also apparently having prophetic dreams of the future, and it kind of messes with your head Tolkien was doing meta-fiction before meta was even a thing.
Apparently. What was he smoking?
He got his hands on some pipe weed.
Apparently.
Yes, it's just not right. Tolkien should not do such things.
Yeah, and Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were real-life friends, and they sort of read each other's works and critiqued them, and even did some sort of almost writing challenges, really. Tolkien did a time travel story into the past, and C.S. Lewis did a science fiction story going into space. And in the Notion Club papers, Tolkien himself, of course, is now out of the picture. He's writing these fictitious scholars who are making up his universe and writing scholarly papers about it. But C.S. Lewis also exists inside this fiction. So they're referencing C.S. Lewis's real writings and how they relate to Tolkien's writings when Tolkien doesn't actually exist inside this fiction.
That just sounds very strange.
It reads like really bad fan fiction. But it's Tolkien writing it, so it can't be. It just breaks my brain.
Oh my lord. I think it would probably break mine too.
The weirdest part is that Tolkien, of course, was writing this back in, I don't know, the 50s or 60s or whatever, but he had his scholars making kind of accidental prophecies about their own future, not just about dreaming the past of Middle-earth, but dreaming bits of the future as well. And so the actual frame of the Notion Club papers is set in like the late 90s or somewhere past 2000. So basically our present day, 50 years after Tolkien was writing it.
Right.
And the weirdest part is he talks about how they managed to predict the Great Storm of 86 or something. And Christopher Tolkien, who of course J.R.R. Tolkien's son, who's publishing his father's papers as the history of Middle-earth, comments that one of these predictions, this Great Storm, actually happened.
Wow.
As Tolkien accidentally predicted it, he was off by just 4 months. The greatest storm in living memory hit the south of England 4 months after Tolkien's fictitious storm that was predicted by his fictitious characters.
Wow. That's kind of trippy.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I've been rereading Queen of Sorcery, which I did not get anywhere near finished, but considering I've read it, I don't know how many times, I think I'll be okay.
Does it matter? Neither of us have read it at all.
Well, yeah, but
not lately.
Not lately.
Not
See,
lately.
This is one of those I wasn't real worried because, I know we've all read it enough that we're familiar enough with the material that we can discuss it. And I've also been reading the third book in the Symphony of Ages trilogy by Elizabeth Hayden, which is called Destiny. Which, you probably haven't made it that far yet, but we did discuss that one on the podcast 3 episodes ago.
I'm only up to number 10 or something.
But it was the book of the month on the Tavern, and I had read it before. I'm the one that suggested it, and the first book is kind of really very boring in parts because they spend 1,400 years climbing through the root system of a tree to come out on the other side of the planet.
Okay.
Yeah, that bit's kind of boring. it picks up when they come out on the other side and realize that not only are they on the other side of the world, it's 1,400 years later than it was when they started.
Yeah, I really hope it picks up.
Yeah, things sort of get better after that. But now the main reason I'm reading it is there's the big evil in these books is this group of demons called the Fedor. And they don't have a physical form. They have to basically possess somebody. But the person they possess has no idea that they've been possessed, and there's no way to tell unless you smell this foul scent that they emit or their eyes are rimmed in red. Anyway, I don't remember who the host of the Fedor is, and it's driving me crazy, and that's why I'm still reading, because I want to know. Even though I've read them before. Other than that, there's a stack of like 4 things on my nightstand that I've started reading and haven't touched in months, so I don't really figure they're that important. I'll get around to them eventually. But yeah, my goal this year, my reading goal, which I set at 60 books and I'm behind on, my actual goal was to try to read some of the stuff that has been on my bookshelves for years and I've never read, and I'm failing miserably because I keep rereading things.
Yes, I keep rereading things as well and telling myself, no, you're supposed to be reading new stuff.
Like,
it's not working.
I have, like, the first 20-something volumes of the Xanth novels by Piers Anthony that I've never read, that I've had for years. I was going to, start at the top of my shelf, which is alphabetized by author's last name. I was going to start with Piers Anthony and just work my way down, and not happening. I'm not going to make this go. By this time last year, I was already like halfway to my goal.
Yeah, I was a hang of a lot further along. I think I'm going to have to change my goal. I don't think I'm going to get to it. I can't even remember what it was.
I set mine at 60. I'm like 4 or 5 books behind something according to Goodreads.
Yeah, I think I had mine at 100 because that's what I've done in the past. But that's not going to happen.
I don't think I'm going to hit 60. Of course, to be fair, I blame my neighbor for this.
Yeah, I'd blame your neighbor for it too.
Well, when I get text messages at midnight, hey, come over. You kind of cut into my running time, dude. So yeah, it's his. We're just going to go with that. It's his fault. But anyway,
yeah, I agree.
Our main discussion tonight is going to be Queen of Sorcery, which we discussed Pawn of Prophecy last week, and unfortunately, y'all weren't around for that one. But Queen of Sorcery picks up after Garion saves the day, denounces the Earl of Jarvik, and at this point, you've sort of started getting a hint that Garion might just be somebody important.
I think I knew at that point.
Yeah, it starts becoming really obvious by that point because, you sort of start to figure it out when they leave Faldor's and Polgara's like, I can't leave him here, he's not safe.
Yeah, and the bit where, I think it's at the end of Pawn of Prophecy where, what's the Chariot King's name?
Ag.
Thank you, him. I've forgotten his name. Takes Garion's hand and turns it over and he's got the silver thing on his palm. I was like, and freaks out. But yeah, I think I started kind of getting hints then, but Eddings isn't exactly supple.
No,
up to that point he's just been going, oh, and then there's this bit of history, wink wink, nod nod.
Yeah. Well, in Queen of Sorcery we get a few new characters. This is where we meet Leldoran and Manderallen.
Yay.
And I love Leldoran. I do.
He's adorable.
Even though he's dumber than a box of rocks. I love him.
Yeah, that's just because he has a bow.
Well,
you just like him because he's an archer.
This is possible.
It's why I like him.
We have established I have a thing for archery and people who do archery, so it's possible. But, granted, he's not in it very much because, they fight the Algroths and he kind of gets all bunged up and has to stay behind. But we also meet Manderallen, who's like the greatest knight in the world.
And also dumber than a box of rocks.
Well, Arryns, they're not real bright. They're all fiercely loyal and very noble and very brave.
And very stupid.
Yes. Very much so. But, the relationship, the dynamic between Leldorin and Manderallen kind of reminds me of Legolas and Gimli from Lord of the Rings.
It does a bit.
I mean, instead of an elf and a dwarf, you have an
Asturian and a Mimbraid.
Yeah, that's the word I couldn't find. I was like, what is Leldorin? I forgot. Oh, I'm ashamed. Anyway, but they hate each other with the passion of 1,000 fiery suns, just on the basis that one's an Asturian and one's a Mimbraid. It's kind of like elves and dwarves. They just hate each other. I mean, there's reasons for it, and you learn those reasons later on, but they are probably... I can't really say they're two of my favorite characters, because I think I said that about Barrack and Silk as well. I love everybody.
They're very funny, though.
Yeah, and I love the way Garion and Leldorin meet. You know, Leldorin is dressed in all these brightly colored clothes, and he's riding his horse through these ruins, and Garion just sort of pulls him off his horse.
And whacks him one.
Yeah.
I like the conversation they have when Belgariad comes up to them and starts yelling, and they're both like, "What? No, we weren't fighting. We were just playing."
He was showing me how to block a swing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all.
He has
nothing going on. Yeah.
Garion has to step on Leldorin's foot to get him to shut up.
Which, of course, is always the most subtle way to tell someone, just go with it.
Yeah, well, you know,
Notice.
We are talking about Leldorin here. Anything less subtle than a 20-pound sledgehammer is probably not going to work.
That's a fair point. I'm fairly certain, though, that I don't think we're ever supposed to think that Belgariad wasn't fooled. Like, he knew perfectly well what was going on. He's not called the wisest man in the world for no reason.
Well,
he's not an idiot.
And, you know, he's been around boys Garion's age for centuries, because he's been hiding these heirs to the Revan throne, and he knows. He's not stupid. And you can just kind of get the feeling that he is just looking at both of them like, I don't believe either one of you, but just shut up.
I can't be bothered having this conversation anymore.
Also in this book, I'm skipping over a bunch of stuff, like I said, probably because I didn't actually finish reading it, but you really find out how special Garion is in this one, because you find out that this dark, shadowy figure that's been stalking him around his whole life is a Grollan priest. And also, it's the same person that murdered Garion's family.
I like the bits with Asharik, Chamdar, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
When he makes Garion go off, flying off down into the field on his horse and freaks out and thinks the others are all after him. I was like, it's very nice writing. It's not florid and really hugely descriptive, but it's quite unsettling.
Yeah.
To read, and you really get a sense that Garion is completely and utterly freaking out.
Yeah. And I like the bit where he projects his shadow right after Manderallen joins them, and Belgariad sends it back, and he says he sent it back by a rather indirect route. That it won't hurt him in any way, but he will be very conspicuous for a while.
That's just the kind of petty thing we've come to expect from Belgariad.
That's why we love him.
You'd think he'd be above such things now. He's so old, but no.
No. Well, you know, he started out life as a thief, and that didn't really change all that noticeable.
That's a very good point.
You know.
Well, you don't really know that in these books.
Well, no. Well, no, not
He's
really.
Just the old man.
Yeah. And very bad-tempered. And like I said, I love how in these books, the older Garion gets, the more they start comparing him to Belgariad.
There are some definite similarities.
Because Garion is very irritable.
He is very irritable.
And he gets that from his grandfather. Because the littlest things are just, I don't know, they just turn the right screw in his head and make him want to kill something.
Like that whole jumping on Leldorin thing. He'd heard a couple of serfs talking about their life, and then he just felt that, well, if they're so miserable, nobody in this country should be happy. And Leldorin was just too happy, damn it. So he pulled him off his horse and attacked him.
Well, yeah, there's that.
That was terrible, terrible reason to go on someone.
Well, this is the same boy who decided it was a good idea to reenact the Battle of Vomembre with a pot on his head. Which,
True.
And the same boy that keeps hitting his head on things.
Yes, I have to admit, though, the little kid in me can't help but think that the pot helmet was a perfectly sensible idea.
Well, when you're that age, it makes sense. But he really does have a problem with hitting his head in these books. I think the total by the end of Queen of Sorcery, I think last time I read them, I counted, by the end of Queen of Sorcery, it was like 3 or 4.
Wow, that's worrying. I mean, he does it so often that it turns into an in-universe
It really does.
conversation.
I mean, at one point somebody says, I thought we were agreed you weren't going to do that anymore.
I think that was Belgariad.
Yes.
He did that.
I mean, it becomes a running joke in the story. But after we find out who Chamdar is, Garion finds out that Chamdar is the one who killed his parents. And, he had the conversation with Belgariad that he wanted revenge. So he sets Chamdar on fire. And that's actually, I like that scene. I mean, you feel sorry for Garion because he wants to stop the burning. He wants to let him go when he starts begging for mercy. And then Polgara kind of forces his hand. But,
I feel sorry for Chamdar. I'm sorry, but burning alive is not a pleasant way to go.
Well, no. But, that's what he did to Garion's parents, so I can kind of understand why fire was the way to go there. But, Garion was, 15, 16 years old at the time?
Something like that.
16.
He'd never killed anybody.
Certainly not in such an unconventional...
No, and to have, he's going to stop it. He's going to turn it off because he's human. He doesn't like watching him suffer. And Polgara is just like, no, keep the fire on him. He's the one who killed your parents. Burn, burn, burn.
Yes, well, she has a bit of a revenge-driven attitude from time to time as well.
She has a bit of a chip on her shoulder.
She has a huge chip on her shoulder, and she's definitely, I mean, you don't see it more in the biographies than the main series, but she's definitely got that revenge mindset a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And with this, I think she was also just trying to provoke Garion into an outward, very obvious bit of sorcery.
Yeah, because he had used it before that when he healed the monk of his insanity.
It was all instinctive, and I think she needed him, or wanted him, or who knows what she was thinking, but she wanted him to do something where it was, what's the word I'm trying to think of?
Deliberate.
Thank you. Yeah, that'll do. Deliberate. It wasn't just an instinctive thing. He was making a choice, and...
Yeah, well, and even so, then he still kind of did it on instinct because he didn't stop and think his way through drawing in his will and how he was going to do this and everything. But I'm sorry, but the part where Polgara tries to tell Dernick that it was her that did it and she just did it through Garion was the clumsiest thing Polgara ever said.
Yeah, it was quite bad. And don't we get the impression, I haven't actually reread the book in a while, but doesn't Dernick kind of just look at her funny like, I don't really believe you?
Yeah, he's just kind of like, if you say so, we'll go with that.
Yeah, they use that as the same excuse for the healing the monk thing.
Yeah.
Well, and there's only so many times you can use the same excuse before people start to get suspicious.
Yeah, well, and Dernick is a little bit smarter than some of the people in this book.
He's smarter than he looks.
Yeah, well, see,
smarter than he acts.
The problem is that I'm pretty sure by this point, it's never out and out said, but I'm pretty sure Barrack and Silk, at the very least, know who Garion is.
Yeah, I got the impression they probably worked out, especially Silk. And I mean, Barrack as well, because he's another one who's nowhere near as dumb as he looks.
Yeah.
Or is pretending to be.
Yeah.
I get the impression they probably figure it out pretty darn quickly.
Yeah.
Especially Silk. And
Dernick has no idea. He doesn't know about the orb and Belgarath and Polgara and all of this magic stuff. He's a Sindar.
Yeah, he doesn't care. They don't go in for that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, if he knew that Garion was the heir to the Revan throne, he would treat him differently, burning Chamdar to ashes aside.
Yes. And the fact is that Barrack and Silk both know who Polgar and Belgarath really are.
Yeah, and they have known that from the beginning.
Doesn't at the beginning. He doesn't know who they are right at the start. So he's not even thinking that kind of way.
Of course, also in this book, we get more hints that Brill, the farmhand that showed up at the end of Pawn of Prophecy, we get more hints in this one that he's not exactly what he appears to be. He's not just a stinky farmhand.
He is stinky, though. I like Brill, actually.
Well, he's a good villain. I mean...
yeah, that's what I mean. I like him. He's a good villain. I don't like him, but... He's an effective... Because I like Silk, and it's nice having Brill there as a good foil for Silk.
Yeah, because otherwise Silk is just a little bit too...
Manic?
Well,
crazy?
That.
Hyper?
I was going for, perfect, because, if there's nothing there to challenge him, then...
That too.
But yeah, they spot him, which apparently he's quite easy to spot, because, he has one eye that kind of looks off in the other direction at all times.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how he could actually be an effective foil for Silk when he's so obvious. Maybe Eddings was just playing opposites.
Possibly.
Silk blends in, but Brill is really obvious.
Yeah, Silk is a master of disguise. Brill, not so much. We can spot him everywhere we go.
We can smell him everywhere we go.
Well, there's that too. Apparently he was a rather odoriferous fellow. But, and he continues to turn up throughout the whole series. And eventually you find out a very unpleasant surprise about him that just completely sets Silk off kilter.
Yes, but it leads to some of the funniest lines in the whole series.
Well, this is true too.
But we can't tell that because that would spoil things.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there eventually. We're not really worried about spoilers. I mean, the books are 30 years old. At this point, spoilers are a non-issue.
Are they really that old?
That's why we're doing this. Pawn of Prophecy was released in April, 31 years ago.
Wow, it's older than me.
Yeah.
And you. Actually, all of us.
Queen of Sorcery, published 1984. No, 1982. My apologies.
Oh, wow. I had no idea they were that old.
Yeah. I didn't either. Wow. But that explains why my covers look so outdated.
Yeah, and why ours are so faded and falling apart.
Look, I just got a brand new set. Well, it's been a few months ago. My Pawn of Prophecy was falling apart, but it was my third copy, but to be fair, every one I had bought was used when I bought it. But I had read it to pieces, and I mentioned this last week, and Denise can cut this out if she doesn't want it to be on the show this week, but I went in the Goodwill store, and I think it was book 1 and book 3 were beside each other on the shelf, and I continued to look through all of the paperback books till I found all 5 of them, and they were brand new. The spines had no creases in them. They had never been read, and I paid a grand total of $2.50 for the set.
I hate you. You might want to cut that out.
So, naturally, I bought all 5 of them.
Of course.
For that price, I couldn't walk away and leave them. And I was like, I'm going to the used bookstore of Awesome very soon. I will take my set, which has seen better days, some of them, and I will keep the new ones. So, yeah.
As you would. They're really hard to find over here in bookstores because they're so popular.
Well, not so much now. They're being republished with those new covers and with Christopher Paolini putting an endorsement on the cover.
Yeah, see, I'm not really the Christopher Paolini part. I like the new covers because
they're weird.
Well, they are kind of weird, but like I said, they're new, they're updated, they're colorful. They make the books attractive to a generation that is used to visually striking covers like Harry Potter.
Yeah. Actually, I found some in the library the other day, and they had different covers to the ones that you had on the tavern.
Yeah.
Again, and I was thinking, how many different kind of covers have we got for one series?
I think they should have done, and that may have been why they did the new covers. I only just found out they may have done that for the 30th anniversary. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. Because they did show up a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So, but still, I think the U.S. needs updated covers.
Yeah, I think you need updated covers too. Your covers are horrible.
They really are. But, they're not that hard to find over here. Any new bookstore you go into, they always, you can find all of the Eddings books. And even the used bookstore that I go to, there's usually quite a bit of Eddings up there. So, I mean, they're really easy to find around here. Anyway, back to...
Wandered off the book a bit.
Well, we don't really have a track we follow. We just kind of wander where we will. You also meet the king and queen of Arindia in this book, Coradolan and Maya Serana. They have the strangest names.
They do explain them.
Mm.
Yeah.
They explain them, though, that they're all kind of mishmashes of ancient names that have been kind of jammed together, and we have to maintain this fictitious union of Arindia, so we're going to name all our kings and queens the same.
Right, because Arindia they're constantly at war with each other. There used to be 3 groups, the Waysites, the Membrates, and the Asturians, and the Waysites got exterminated several centuries ago, which Bulgaria was quite disappointed about.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah. So now you just have the Membrates and the Asturians, and right now, this is part of the problem when they meet Lil Doran, is Garion finds out that Lil Doran is part of a plot to kill the king.
Oh, I forgot about the plot. That was a terrible plot. How did I manage to forget about that?
Yeah, well, it was...
You lost the plot, I guess.
Don't laugh at him. Stop encouraging him.
But it was funny.
No, it wasn't. You don't have to put up with it every day.
Anyway, Margot sets up this plot that he's supplying gold and these uniforms so that when the king travels through to wherever it was he was going, they're going to kill him wearing the uniforms of Telnedran legions. So he's going to think Telnedra is responsible for it, and it's going to set off another war, and Garion finds out about this because, Lil Doran is very impulsive and opens his mouth when he shouldn't.
He can't keep his mouth shut.
And you find out that the king will not recognize Asturian titles. And that's part of the problem that the Asturians have with the Membrates. Because the king is a Membrate. The queen is an Asturian. And they explain, that at some point that they can maintain this fiction of a united Arindia by all of their kings and queens being named Coradolan and Maya Serana, not to mention all the inbreeding. Because they do that. They do. They get a little bit, sickly because of that. And no, Hedar was around in the first book. He was there when Garion saved the day in Cherrick. So Lil Doran's part of this plot, and finally he releases Garion and says that Garion has to do something to stop it. He can't let it happen.
So after he gets sick and...
Yeah.
And it's after... Yeah, it's after he gets sick and they go to that... They go to the... Is it the Membrate?
Yes.
It's a Membrate house they name him in, isn't
yes.
it? Yeah. Because that's where Ariana crops off.
Yes.
So Garion once again finds himself in a position where he is denouncing someone to a king.
Poor Garion.
And this is kind of the start of the famous Eddings repetitions. I love the writing, I love the story, but he does ride this when the accident happened, the universe stopped thing kind of hard.
I like that as a plot piece.
Well, yeah, I mean...
It's a clever way of explaining the bad thing that's happened that the good guys are out to fix.
Right. He has to tell... You come to find out that this Margot that set up this plot is one of the advisors to the King of Arindia, so yeah, that's not going to complicate things.
And he wants to keep Leldoran's name out of it, so he can't even provide any proof or any names of people involved in the plot.
Right.
That would betray his friend.
So not that anyone with a brain can't figure it out.
Well,
I mean, Mander Allen figures it out, for Pete's sake.
That's true. But Mander Allen steps up and challenges this Margot, and things get kind of bloody.
Well, yeah, and the Membrates think it's wonderful.
Well, of course, because they're all, let's just hack and slash all day long. Of course, I think Hedar Indy, he gets to kill, he's the one that actually kills him, because the Murgo runs away, and Hedar kind of stands in his way and runs him through with a sword.
Does it?
Yeah, you know, he hates Murgos because they killed his parents and drug him along behind a horse till they thought he was dead. Oh, one of my favorite scenes is while they're in Arendia and Garion gets cornered by the Countess who is looking for a husband, and Polgara comes and saves him by telling her...
Being so impressed with the fact that Garion was the one who denounced the Murgo and revealed the plot, so he's saved the day, and virgins will sing of his deeds.
Apparently. Let's never mind the fact that he's only 16. But apparently...
Yeah, that kind of... I tend to forget that he was young, and sometimes I wonder about that scene, like, why is he so freaked out? I mean, yeah, she's coming on a bit strong, but I forget that he was only 16.
Well, he was only 16, and he grew up...
a lot older than that.
And the only girl he ever been around was Zabret. So, I mean...
He was a bit forward, too, sometimes, but...
Well, yeah. But Polgara saves the day by telling the Countess that Garion hasn't had his medicine, and that they can marry him off before his brains turn to mush. And Garion...
I find myself wanting to use that in real life, because it's just such a perfect thing. It's just so good. I really want to use it on someone.
Yeah, it was great. But then Polgara wants to act like it's Garion's fault. Like, can't you stay out of trouble? And he's like, what did I do?
Yeah, that annoys me. It's not, he didn't do anything. Maybe she was referring to the whole, I'm going to expose
No, she already chewed him out over that one, so that's not the particular complaint here. This one's just, how could you let yourself get cornered by a girl?
Yeah.
It's your fault.
I'm a 16-year-old boy. What do you think Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I just don't like Polgara.
Oh, and we forgot the scene when they first go into Arendia, and Belgariad has to grow an apple tree.
Oh, yes, for Sir Andrew.
Yes.
I think it was. How could I remember his name but not Anheg?
When they first get to Voldemort.
Yeah, well, I do like the apple tree growing scene, actually. That's pretty cool.
It's okay. I forgot that Lil Dorian was an Asturian, so...
That's true.
Yeah, this knight doesn't want to let them in. He knows who Mandralin is, but he's like, I only have your word that this is Belgarath, and I'm not going to let him in just on your word. So Belgarath plucks a twig out of the horse's tail and grows him an apple tree. And he's like...
And then tells him that he has to give free
right.
apples to everyone who asks. That was quite a nice touch.
Yeah, well, you know, at least he'll do something useful with his life. I think that's the remark somebody makes.
That's what he actually says.
Yep.
And this part where they're in Arendia is when Garion is really on this... I think it was in here where he really starts getting pouty about the fact that Polgara's not related to him, or did that end in Pawn of Prophecy?
That was in Pawn of Prophecy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they're on the ship when he does that.
Right. Like I said, it would have helped if I'd have finished rereading this before we did this, but, you know, hey. Whatever.
It's alright. The whole cornered by the Countess thing kind of leads us into the other new character that's introduced in this book.
Ooh.
Yeah, who?
Imperial Princess.
Oh, right, yes, Sinedra.
Oh, yeah. Because they go...
You forgot her? You talked about Brill. You talked about Leldarin, who, for all that he's an important character, is only in it for a few chapters. You forgot her Imperial Highness.
Sinedra would be very annoyed.
Yes.
Which kind of gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling.
She would be quite put out with us.
I don't like Sid. I like her more than Polgara, but she's not my favourite.
Well, you know, it's Edding syndrome. The women... He has issues with writing women characters.
Yes, and she's like a mini Polgara, but she has even less reason to be. I mean, you look at Polgara and you think, yeah, okay, she's 3,000 years old, she's had to do all this stuff. In some ways, you can kind of understand why she's the way she is. But Sinedra's like that, and Sinedra is like 15, 16. She has no reason. She's just a spoiled brat.
Well, this is true. She is definitely a spoiled brat. We also get to see... another thing I like about this book, we get to see a lot more of the world because, they go to Vomembre, they go to Tolnedra, they go to
Nyissa.
Yeah, they go to Nyissa, and he did his world building. I think he did it well because it was very subtle. It wasn't just exposition of this is da 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 da. He didn't hit us over the head with it. He just let us see it.
And he didn't have 3-page descriptions like Tolkien.
Oh, Lord.
As much as I like Tolkien's writing, and I think he was fantastic, I do get a little bit bored with 3-page descriptions of the tree, and my husband is giving me a really evil glare right now.
Well, he can give it to me too because I kind of agree, but Tolkien is nowhere near as bad as Robert Jordan.
Well, there's a reason I never got past halfway through the first Wheel of Time book.
Look,
Actually, it was the characters more than anything else.
Yeah, see, Randall Thor, most annoying protagonist ever. But still,
and if we think Eddings women are bad,
yeah, God.
Wheel of Time women
so bad
are even worse.
I wanted to cut Nineveh's braid off.
I can think of worse things to do to someone who...
it would stop her tugging on it constantly.
I don't really remember. I only read the first half of the first book.
Well,
and I've kind of lost the memory.
Okay.
Really long hair.
In the first half of the book, she maybe tugs on a braid a few hundred times. It keeps going.
Oh.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Doesn't get better.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sinedra.
Yes. Back to the Eddings woman at hand.
Yeah, we meet the Emperor of Tolnedra and his daughter, Sinedra, who is very tiny and has bright red hair and a temper to match.
Mm-hmm. Which she gets from her mother.
Yes. Well, you find out that she's a dryad. She's not human entirely.
Yeah, they never really explain that very well.
No.
It's magic. Leave alone.
It's magic.
She's a dryad, but she's not, because they make a big deal about how they had to introduce the Boroon strain into the dryads, but it breeds through the female line, but the dryad women, Boroon women will also have sons, but the girls are still dryads. I'm finding a few logic holes in there.
It's a genetic impossibility, but we're going to go with it, because apparently peoples are different in this universe.
Well, there is sorcery. I suppose we shouldn't complain.
This is true.
There are other things to complain about before the genetics, I guess.
But, they go to tell Rand Boroon what's going on in the world and yada yada, and when they leave, they are set upon by an old man and this dark-headed girl who's going to visit family, which is really Sinedra in a really horrible disguise.
Which we all know right from the beginning anyway.
Yeah.
Both in and out of the story.
Yeah.
Well, not everyone in the story figured it out.
No, Gary is the first one to figure it out.
Well,
we're told he figures it out. I suspect probably Silk, and Polgara definitely.
Polgara definitely. She says that
Yeah.
she knows when Garion tells her.
Yeah.
Durnix, I think, is the only one who doesn't twig to it right
Maybe...
away. But Durnix not the kind of person who'd be looking for that.
Maybe Mandaralan didn't pick up on it, but we can forgive him.
Yeah, that's true, But then, she runs away because she doesn't want to go to Riva on her 16th birthday. And she basically, once they all decide who she is, she's like, well, we're going to the Wood of the Dryads. I'll just stay with the queen there. She's my cousin or aunt or something. And
Your
then
accent is affecting me.
and the Queen of the Dryads basically tells her, no, you're going to go to Riva because we're going to honor our treaties.
Yeah, because they don't want their trees burned down or cut down or destroyed. No, not if I was a dryad anyway.
I mean, if you lived in an oak tree, would you want someone to come along and chop it down?
No. Yes, I do have to admit, some of my favourite parts are the bits where Polgara is putting Sinedra in her place.
Yeah.
Going, you're gonna come along. I want you where I can keep my eye on you. You're coming. Shut up. And Sinedra's just like, okay.
And we get to the scene
It's refreshing.
in the Wood of the Dryads that Sinedra later refers to as the time they bathed together.
Oh, yes.
When Garion peeks at her when she's taking a bath.
Polgara's shoving them
He
together.
did not peek.
Yeah, and as the dry voice said, if you didn't peek, then why do you remember it in such detail?
Which is exactly what the voice of prophecy says to him.
Yes.
Yeah.
It comes in handy later.
It's like, if you didn't peek, then why do you remember it so well? And Garion doesn't really have a response to that.
Sometimes it's easy to forget that these two are, just because they're not a huge deal, not made of their age, and because all the adults, apart from Polgara, tend to treat Garion as an equal for the most part, it's easy to forget that they're just teenagers.
Yeah. Oh, and then we have, this is after the bathing scene, we have the Mud Man, where Mandaralin decides he's actually afraid of something.
Well, I think that's a perfectly legitimate thing to be afraid of. The descriptions are pretty creepy.
Well, this is true, but it's more the fact that Mandaralin thinks that his life is over because he has felt fear.
Yes, that's true. It's a big... He's like the first membrane to think and learn something new.
Yeah, he's just like, I have discovered a grievous fault, and yada yada, in his old flowery speech, and, you know, I felt fear, and it's like, dude, that's it.
I do like the way Dernick responds to that. It's like, everybody feels fear, it's what you do with it, and although I think the others kind of get a little bit annoyed, like, did you have to tell them to laugh at it? Yeah. I just these wonderful mental images of this man in full armor on this massive horse charging along, roaring with laughter. Like, I can understand why the others are kind of like, really? No one will take us seriously anymore because you're giggling.
Yeah. Of course, you know, at this point, Garion is really sulking about the whole Chamdar thing. He's like, I don't want to be a sorcerer. I'm never going to use my power again. Stop calling me Belgarian. I'm not going to do it.
Yes.
And he hits this really stubborn streak where he doesn't want to listen to what his aunt is telling him.
He calls Polgara a monster. Isn't that the point where he calls her a monster?
Yes, when they get to this tour.
Yes.
Well done.
That's after he translocates the slave out of the water.
Oh,
yeah,
yes,
right after that.
She gets mad at him, which I think is probably one of the few occasions when she does it legitimately.
Well, yeah, because, you know, they're in this tour and they're being followed by a bunch of Grollems, and, you know, sorcery makes a sound that other talented people can hear, and translocation is one of the loudest things you can do.
Yes, and he's been refusing tutelage and not learning anything, and then he just goes off and does this wild thing, which apparently sounds a bit like a thunderclap or something.
Yeah, and even though the slave was dead when he hit the water, because apparently the foot-long leeches are poisonous.
Yay! Because foot-long leeches aren't bad enough.
Right.
You have to make them poisonous.
I'm pretty sure everything in Nyssa is poisonous.
Yeah, in large enough quantities, at least.
Yeah, most of them will kill you, but some of them will make you very happy first.
That's true. But this is when Silk and Belgarath had split off. They had went to see if they could pick up the trail of the orb. And you have to forgive me, I'm flipping through the book. I'm cheating.
Alright, so were we.
They'd split off while the others sailed down to this tour.
Right.
For a reason I can't quite remember why they decided they wanted to go there.
There was some... I think it was... No, I can't remember why they went either.
Because they wanted to know if Salmisra had anything to do with what was going on. And well, when they were in the Dryads, one of the Dryads was like, I saw the big ship on the big pond that tastes salty.
Oh, yeah.
No, you're thinking of the Mallorean.
Oh, yeah, that is. Yeah, that's later. Never mind. Anyway.
Much later.
Something happened, and they think Salmisra might have been involved, because this is when she kidnaps Garion and starts giving him the drugs, and Polgara turns her into a snake. Or does she do that later?
No, she turns her into a snake.
Yeah.
After she gets Garion back, and she goes very, very angry.
Mm.
Right, because Salmisra summons the spirit of Issa, and Polgara talks to him and says that she will spare Salmisra's life. So she turns her into a snake and basically makes her immortal.
Yes, which turns out to not be such a bad thing after all.
No, Sylmestra kind of chills out when she becomes a snake.
Yes, and they end up thanking Polgara for it later.
Oh, me. Snakes are cold-blooded, and that didn't occur to me till after I said that.
Oh, I thought it was deliberate.
No.
She chilled out.
Ah! I totally missed that. Oh, well.
I said it, and he started snickering, and I was just like, oh, yeah, snakes are cold-blooded.
I'm just so used to it that they tend to just fly right past me. I'm so used to it now.
Oh, and then the mountain exploded.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. The volcano.
Right about the time that Polgara and Barak were storming the palace,
right.
Which made everyone panic.
Well, wouldn't you panic if the sun was blocked out and ash was falling all around you? I might be a little concerned.
Walls start exploding and a big bear comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, I would be concerned.
Yeah, that would worry me.
But they're waiting on Belgariad and Silk to get back, and this book is where you really start meeting the voice of the prophecy, which you don't really know that's who it is. You just know it as the dry voice in Garion's mind.
Yeah, and Garion doesn't even seem to realize, in Queen of Prophecy at least, he doesn't really seem to realize the fact that this is actually external to him.
Yeah, that it's separate. Well, he realizes it. He says it seems like it's not actually a part of him. But at first, when it starts mentioning it, you think it's like his conscience.
Yeah.
His common sense is how I've always read it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, his common sense seems to just be absent, so that must be it.
Right.
Yeah.
But in this book, you actually start to see actual conversations he has with this voice in his head.
And then Polgara meets up with it and kind of goes, wait, what the hang?
Yeah, she's like, what are you doing here?
Which is interesting because we still don't really know exactly what the voice is, but Polgara knows straight away.
Well, then when...
She seems to recognize him straight away as to exactly who and what this is. And I think it kind of freaks her out a little bit.
But when Belgariad gets back and Garion tells him about it, he's like, I want to make sure you're not carrying an enemy around in your head. And Garion, he's not an enemy. But can I just say some of my favorite parts of the book are this dry voice, the voice of the prophecy.
Oh, he's awesome. He's funny. He's
just very dry and, sarcastic. Because a lot of times Garion is like, where have you been? And he's like, you wouldn't understand the answer. Why do you keep asking me that?
You're not the only person in the universe that I'm concerned with. There are other things going on.
But Belgariad and Silk show back up, and Garion is standing on the ship, and his hand is itching. And the voice has to tell him to put his hand on his amulet, because Belgariad's trying to find them.
Which makes me wonder why Belgariad was using Garion as the lodestone. Why wouldn't he have been just connecting with Polgara?
Well, that's kind of what I wondered, too.
That doesn't really make... I mean, it's a nice way for Garion to learn a little bit more and the prophecy to have a little spiel, but it makes no sense.
Well,
context.
There's a lot of things that don't make any sense. I mentioned last week the whole thing with Belgariad and if I can't identify the difference between a Murgo and a Grolem, nobody can. We had to discuss that last week. But, there's a lot of inconsistencies and things that don't really make sense. And this is one of them. Why would he, if he's trying to locate them, why wouldn't he just mind speak Polgara and be like, hey, we out here on the river. We can't see you because all this, bits of mountain is raining down around us.
Maybe he didn't want to admit to her that he'd broken his arm.
Well, we know he didn't want to tell the story of how he broke his arm.
Mm-hmm.
Which we don't actually get that story until the next book, but...
Well, we get very briefly right at the end of the book.
Yeah.
The tree
She
fell
accuses
on
him
me.
of fighting and does her whole Polgara glare, and he says, no, a tree fell on me.
And Silk just collapses laughing.
Mm.
And then that's pretty...
It's really quite an ignominious way to break your arm.
Yeah. Well,
No, it's an ignominious way for you to break your arm. It's an absolutely hilarious way for the Eternal Man to break his arm.
True. But he shows up and he's like, yeah, we found the trail. He crossed into however you pronounce the can never, we've had many discussions about the pronunciation of Saul Margos. We're just going to go with that.
Close enough.
And Belgariad's like, but we're not following him because we're going to the Vale.
Oh, yes, because Eldor came and went, we need to go to the Vale, and I'm like...
And Belgariad's like, why? And he's like, because my master told me to, and I'm not going to start disobeying him now.
Yeah, you think half of Polgara's whole life has been doing what Eldor tells her. You'd think she wouldn't be so quick to be going, why? It's not like Belgara's going to come up with this on a whim and just go, no, we're going to the Vale. He does actually have good reasons for the things he does.
To be fair, he probably said why a few times at first, but by this point he's gotten over it, and so he wants everyone else to fall in line.
He is 10,000 years old after all.
But yeah, they have to go to the Vale, which, that's one of my favorite parts in the entire series is in the next book when they get to the Vale and Garianne decides to start experimenting.
Yep.
But we'll be talking about that next week.
It's a nice way of taking us through the world.
Yeah.
We're going on a big tiki tour.
Eddings does the grand tour.
He does.
He's made all these countries, and we visit every single one of them at least once.
He worked out all this stuff. I mean, you read something like the Riven Codex, and you find out all the stuff that he wrote and had for these different countries, and it's kind of like a case of, I invented all this stuff, and I'm going to show it off. Come hell or high water, and I don't care what you people think.
Well, I like that way of showing the world rather than just telling me about it.
Yeah, I prefer it too.
And it makes sense. I mean, their journey, they're following the orb at first, and then they have to go to the Vale, and then they have to go retrieve the orb. I mean, their journey, it makes sense in the context of the story. So, I mean, I have no objection to let's wander around the world and see every country from, on the Western continent. Which always confuses me. I'm like, I want to call it the Eastern continent, and it's not. It's the Western.
Yeah, it is too. I don't think I've ever really thought about it.
Like, the Eastern continent's over there where all the Malloreans live.
Mm-hmm.
But that pretty much wraps up Queen of Sorcery. We've covered a lot of material there. It's been fun having you guys on. Well, I don't think I've ever actually talked to you, Rebecca.
No.
I have Tim.
I think
the
time we talked in voice was we watched one of the Harry Potter movies over Skype.
We did. And yours kept getting ahead of mine for some reason.
Yeah.
Which was weird. I think you would think they would play at the same speed no matter what country you're in.
You'd think so.
Of course, I also kidnapped you for a week when you were going to school in the States, so...
Anyway, glad we could help out and not make you do this week's on your own.
Well, I wouldn't have done it on my own. We probably would have just waited until she got her voice back and released 2 episodes at once. But she messaged me and she's like, I can't talk. Like, there's nothing that comes out when I try. So there's no way I'm going to be able to record. Do you think that Marita or someone from the tavern could help you? I'm like, let me send her an email. Maybe she'll see it when she gets up and she can let me know. I said, and since I stay up so late, we won't have to do it at, 8 o'clock in the morning for you.
Which I was actually awake. Well, I was mostly awake at 8 o'clock.
But, now we just have to hope she has time to edit it, which I told her, it can be a day late. It's not going to be a big deal. So, but I appreciate you guys coming on, and if you want to do any more of the Eddings episodes with us, you're more than welcome. It'll be really fun with all 4 of us. I can only imagine the tangents we will take.
That would be quite funny.
But you can find all of us at the Mallorean Tavern, and the address for that is www.maltavern.com. We have a whole room that's nothing but Eddings discussion. Matter of fact, Tim's our moderator for that room, but he sort of just lurks, so...
Yeah.
He doesn't really do a whole lot.
Yes, I do. You just don't see it.
Oh, is that what it is?
We're Edmund. We see everything.
She has a point. And Rebecca is our other lieutenant administrator. And We would love if any of you have read these books. Hop over there, join the discussions we've started, or start your own. We have a very nice discussion going on about what is an event, which that one becomes important later on. They don't really explain that till the Mallorean. But it's been a fun discussion anyway. Mostly because, I like arguing with Strider. But that'll probably do it for us for tonight. You can as always, you can download or listen to our episodes on our website, which is bibliophiles-anonymous.com. We also have a YouTube channel. Just search Bibliophiles Anonymous and we should show up. And we shall see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
You might. Now tell everybody bye.